2 days earlier, she said she had never been happier in her life. On the morning she vanished, that happiness still seemed intact. Sunrise over Baytown, a warm goodbye, a normal text, a black Mercedes pulling away just after 7 a.m. She was supposed to pick up her children. She had plans later that day. People were expecting her that night. Then the silence hit. No replies, no arrival, no explanation. And just as her family realized something was wrong, Hurricane Harvey crashed into the Texas coast, burying roads underwater and throwing the entire region into chaos. In a disaster that massive, a missing woman could be explained away in 100 terrible ways. But days later, her car was found abandoned in floodwater at a Motel 6 parking lot. Unlocked, keys inside, placed so carelessly it felt deliberate. It wasn't just a disappearance anymore, it was a scene, and someone had tried to let the storm erase it. This is the case of Crystal McDowell. On August 25, 2017, as the Texas coast braced for Hurricane Harvey, 37-year-old Crystal McDowell moved through what looked like an ordinary morning. She left her boyfriend's home in Baytown, Texas, climbed into her black Mercedes, and drove away just after sunrise. She planned to pick up her 2 children, Madden and Maui, from her ex-husband, Steve McDowell. She had meetings later in the day. She expected to see family that evening. Then she vanished. The timing made everything feel unreal. By nightfall, Harvey would slam into Texas with catastrophic force. Roads would flood, neighborhoods would disappear underwater, thousands of people would be displaced. The storm would tear apart homes, cut power, bury evidence, and overwhelm every emergency system in its path. In the middle of that chaos, Crystal's disappearance could have become one more unanswered loss swallowed by the flood. But Crystal McDowell's story did not begin with the storm. It began many years earlier, in a life marked by pain, survival, and relentless effort to build something better. Crystal's childhood was brutal. Her parents struggled with addiction, and both died from AIDS-related complications tied to substance abuse when she was still a child. She was left without them at 11 years old. 2 years later, another horror entered her life. She was abducted by a sex offender, held in a chicken coop, and subjected to sustained abuse before she managed to escape. After that, she moved in with relatives and tried to begin again. Many people would have been broken by that kind of beginning. Crystal refused to stay broken. She grew into a driven, energetic woman who wanted more from life than the suffering she had been handed. She became a flight attendant, and during that chapter she met Steve McDowell, a shipping manager with an easygoing, youthful personality. They married quickly. From the outside, the relationship often looked bright and spontaneous. They laughed together. They chased excitement. They built a home and later welcomed 2 children, a son named Madden and a daughter named Maui. But beneath the cheerful surface, the marriage had been unstable from early on. Crystal was unfaithful during the marriage with both men and women, and that betrayal cut deeply into the relationship. She left Steve more than once. She even filed for divorce within the first year of marriage, though the marriage continued. When the children were born, the focus shifted toward keeping the family together. For a time, that seemed enough. Crystal eventually left her job in the air and moved into real estate in Baytown. She worked hard and found success. As the years passed, she became the primary provider. Steve spent freely, and the imbalance created resentment. Crystal felt trapped in a life that no longer matched what she wanted. The old cracks widened. By 2017, after 10 years of marriage, the divorce was finally complete. Even then, the break was not clean. Crystal and Steve agreed to share custody of Madden and Maui. They continued living together in the townhouse for a while, as Crystal renovated it and prepared it for sale. The paperwork was done, but the emotional separation was far messier. Steve had not accepted the end of the marriage. He remained deeply attached to Crystal. He still wore his wedding ring. He behaved as though the divorce might somehow reverse itself. He changed his social media to grim images that reflected loss and obsession. Crystal had moved on, but Steve had not. By the summer of 2017, Crystal's life seemed to be turning in a new direction. She had started dating a local jeweler named Paul Hargrave, who was also recently divorced. With Paul, she felt lighter, happier, more hopeful. Her work was going well. Her children were growing. She began talking like someone who could finally see a better future ahead of her. 2 days before she disappeared, she wrote that she had never been happier in her life. That happiness stood in sharp contrast to Steve's state of mind. He was still in love with her. He was angry about the divorce, angry about money, angry about Paul, and angry that Crystal had emotionally left him for good. He had even planned to propose to her again on an upcoming family cruise, despite the fact that the marriage had already ended. Crystal had asked him not to come. She invited Paul instead. She also cut Steve off financially. That decision deepened the fracture. Steve had lost the marriage, lost control of the household, lost the future he still imagined for himself, and now he was losing access to the life Crystal had supported for years. Everything was slipping away at once. On the morning of August 25th, Crystal left Paul's house around 7-9 a.m. Security cameras showed her gathering her belongings and getting into her Mercedes. Before driving off, she sent Paul a warm text about the clear roads and the possibility of taking the kids somewhere if they wanted to go. It was affectionate, casual, and completely normal. She never answered another message again. As the day went on, people close to Crystal began to worry. She did not arrive where she was expected. She did not answer calls. She did not appear at her family gathering for the Mayweather and McGregor fight. Her uncle Jeff Walters, who had raised her after the deaths of her parents and loved her like a daughter, knew something was wrong. Crystal was not the kind of mother who simply disappeared. She would not walk away from Madden and Maui. She would not vanish without a word. The storm hit that night. Harvey made landfall around 10 p.m. on August 25th as a Category 4 hurricane. Winds tore across the coast at more than 130 miles per hour. Water swallowed roads, parking lots, homes, and vehicles. Entire neighborhoods went dark. Families scrambled to rooftops and rescue boats. The scale of destruction was historic. In another case, Harvey could have explained everything. A missing person during a storm of that size might have been trapped, stranded, or swept away. But Crystal's family never believed the hurricane was the reason she was gone. They believed something had happened before Harvey arrived. 3 days later, a break came through the floodwater. Someone sent Crystal's cousin a message saying her Mercedes had been seen at a Motel 6 parking lot about 13 miles from her home. The car was partially submerged, sitting in the water with the license plate still visible. When it was reached and examined, the scene made little sense if Crystal herself had left it there. The Mercedes was parked carelessly, the doors were unlocked. The keys had been left inside. It looked staged. Whoever abandoned the car appeared to want it stolen. In normal conditions, a luxury vehicle left that way might have disappeared within hours. But Harvey had changed everything. The flooding froze the plan in place. Instead of vanishing, the Mercedes waited in the water like a mistake that could not be erased. The car was pulled out and processed. At the same time, attention turned to the people closest to Crystal. 3 men quickly stood near the center of the case. Her boyfriend Paul Hargrave, her uncle Jeff Walters, and her ex-husband Steve McDowell. Paul had been the last known person to see Crystal alive. He said he was in the shower when she left his home, which matched the security footage. Still, there was a detail that raised suspicion. The video from his cameras was not immediately turned over through the usual channel. It appeared in the media before it reached the hands of those building the case. The delay created doubt, even though nothing in the footage contradicted his account. Jeff, desperate and frantic, also drew concern by going through Crystal's townhouse with family members. In his mind, he was looking for clues. In reality, it risked disturbing a possible crime scene. He was emotional, forceful, and determined to get answers, but his actions complicated the early stages of the search. Then there was Steve. Steve told a simple story. Crystal had texted that she was on her way to pick up the children. She mentioned water and said she might stay with the kids because the weather seemed like only rain. He also showed a message suggesting she might go to Dallas, where they had previously discussed the possibility of taking shelter from the storm. The messages gave him distance from her disappearance. They suggested she had changed plans. They hinted she was alive after leaving Paul's house and in motion on her own. But Steve's history with Crystal made him impossible to ignore. Their marriage had long been turbulent. When Crystal tried to leave in earlier years, Steve had threatened to kill himself. In one past incident, he disappeared with the children after making similar threats, leaving Crystal terrified enough to call 911. He was possessive, manipulative, and unable to accept the end of the relationship. Crystal had spent years trying to free herself from that pressure. Now she was finally divorced, in love with someone else, financially independent and emotionally done with him. As Harvey slowed the case to a crawl, the pressure built around Steve. There was no activity on Crystal's bank cards, no movement on her phone, no sign that she had crossed state lines or started a new life. The absence of every ordinary trace pointed in one direction. Crystal was dead. Days passed. Floodwaters slowly receded. At the motel where her Mercedes had been found, surveillance video was finally recovered. The footage showed the car arriving at 6:37 a.m. on August 26th, the morning after Crystal vanished. The person who got out resembled Steve, but the image was not clear enough to prove it. Then another camera changed everything. A nearby gas station had captured sharper video. About 5 hours after the Mercedes was abandoned, Steve McDowell appeared at the station. He threw something into a trash can and forced it down hard, as if trying to bury it out of sight. He lingered in the area and repeatedly looked toward the motel lot, checking on the car. The pattern was obvious. Someone had driven Crystal's car to the motel, left it unlocked with the keys inside, and expected it to disappear. Then Steve returned to see whether that plan had worked. There was more. Investigators had noticed a bicycle at Steve's house during an earlier visit. Steve claimed he had been at Walmart that morning. Surveillance from Walmart showed a man matching his description, buying a bicycle with cash, then riding through the rain near the area where Crystal's car had been left. It was still circumstantial. There was no clean facial shot, no tidy chain of physical evidence. But piece by piece, the story around Steve was collapsing. 10 days after Crystal disappeared, as the ground finally began to emerge from the flood, search teams expanded their efforts. Baytown and West Chambers County were combed again. Billboards were discussed. Flyers went up. Her family continued to wait in a state of dread. Steve kept showing up. Day after day, he came in and stayed for hours. At first, he appeared helpful, steady, and cooperative, but as time passed, he began to look worse. He became gaunt, exhausted, and brittle. The strain was beginning to show. Then the final pressure point arrived. Madden and Maui were removed from the home and placed with Crystal's Aunt Cindy. Steve had lost Crystal. Now he was losing the children too. When he was told, his body reacted immediately. He went pale and unsteady. The emotional structure holding him together began to fail. He said he would return the next morning and tell the truth. Before dawn, he reached out to his older daughter, Krista, from another relationship. He asked her to come over because he did not think he would be seeing her for a while. When she arrived around 3:00 a.m., she asked him directly whether he had been involved in Crystal's disappearance. At first he denied it. Then his resistance weakened. He spoke about taking them to the body and receiving a lesser punishment. In that moment, the truth was no longer hidden. Steve confessed. He said that on the morning Crystal came to pick up the children, they argued. During that confrontation, Crystal made it clear that she did not love him anymore. She did not want to be with him. She had moved on, and there was no path back. Steve could not accept it. He grabbed her from behind and choked her. After she was dead, he covered her face with a bag, wrapped her body in a blanket, and placed her in the trunk of her own Mercedes. Then he drove away, disposed of her body in a marshy area, and later abandoned the car at the motel lot, hoping someone would steal it before anyone could trace it back. For more than 2 weeks, Hurricane Harvey had covered the land with water and chaos. That same storm had nearly helped him get away with murder. Instead, Harvey did something Steve never expected. It preserved the car. It delayed the theft he counted on. It trapped his staging plan in plain sight. After his confession, Steve led authorities to Crystal's body. She was found in a marsh, decomposing and hidden in the landscape he believed would protect his crime forever. Without his admission, she might never have been recovered. Steve McDowell was arrested and charged with murder. In the days that followed, the full shape of the case sharpened. Steve tried to frame the killing as a sudden act, a moment of overwhelming emotion rather than a planned murder. But the sequence of events told a different story. He concealed Crystal's body. He moved her car. He bought a bicycle with cash. He returned to watch the motel lot. He created false messages and false distance. He built a plan around a hurricane. The most devastating account came from inside the home itself. At trial, the couple's daughter Maui described what she saw that morning. Her parents were fighting over another man and over Crystal's intention to leave with the children. Steve pushed Crystal onto the bed and struck her. Maui watched her mother struggle. She saw Steve place his hands over Crystal's nose and mouth. She saw Crystal trying to breathe. Then Steve noticed his daughter watching. He became angry and ordered her back into her room. He told her not to tell anyone what she had seen. That testimony stripped away the last remaining space between suspicion and certainty. The killing had happened in front of one of the children Crystal was trying to protect. Steve's attempt to reduce the crime to sudden passion failed. The jury convicted him of murder. He was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He would not be eligible for parole until 2042. By then, the life Crystal had been building was gone. She had survived a childhood shaped by addiction, loss, and violence. She had escaped an abductor when she was still a girl. She had fought to build stability, a career, and a future for her children. She had finally pulled herself free from a marriage that drained her. And just as that new life seemed to open in front of her, the person who could not let her go ended it. Her death left a fracture through everyone who loved her. Jeff Walters, who had raised her, lost the girl he treated as his own daughter. Paul Hargrave was left carrying the weight of a final normal morning that turned into a nightmare by afternoon. Crystal's close friends lost the woman they expected to text, call, and grow older beside. And Madden and Maui lost their mother in an act of violence that began with control and ended with permanent absence. In the aftermath, people rallied around the children. Fundraisers were organized. Small acts of generosity became a way to build something from the wreckage. Every donation, every gesture carried the same silent truth. Crystal was not coming back. Only the children remained, and they would have to grow up in the shadow of what happened. The case became inseparable from the storm that surrounded it. Hurricane Harvey remains one of the deadliest and most destructive hurricanes in Texas history. It flooded roads, erased landmarks, and transformed ordinary places into disaster zones. But in this story, the storm was not the cause of Crystal McDowell's disappearance. It was the cover Steve McDowell tried to use after he killed her. He believed the flood would wash away the trail. He believed a stolen car, a hidden body, and a region in crisis would bury the truth. Instead, the same disaster he used as cover became the reason his plan unraveled. The Mercedes stayed where he left it. The cameras remained. The bicycle mattered. The timeline held. The body was found. The truth came out. Crystal McDowell disappeared on the morning of August 25, 2017, just hours before Hurricane Harvey struck Texas. She was supposed to pick up her children and continue with her day. Instead, that morning became the final chapter of a life spent surviving what should have destroyed her. Her story ended in Baytown, Texas, with a murder committed by Steve McDowell, a man who could not accept that Crystal had chosen to leave him behind. And when the floodwaters finally pulled back, they revealed exactly what he had done.